Hi, so everybody, I'm Chris Lynch. As David was saying, I'll say in the past 4 years of my life have been probably some of the most unexpected moments. It's been a delightful and amazing detour. A lot of times very frustrating, but incredibly important. I am from Seattle. What's interesting about the past 4 years of my life, and David mentioned this, I started software companies, run software teams for many years. I knew nothing about the federal government, and I knew nothing about the military. So I just want that to be kind of the basis for everything. And I showed up, and I started a thing called Defense Digital Service, and this is the sign for my office. We called ourselves the Rebel Alliance. It was this idea that we could bring the greatest technologists, the greatest software engineers, the greatest product managers and designers, and bring them into a place that runs the most technical mission set in the entire world. However, there are basically no technologists. So that's really difficult, right? And if you think about it, I reported directly to the Secretary of Defense, which is really strange. I was originally brought in by Secretary Ash Carter. Under the Obama administration, I stayed on with Jim Mattis and then with Pat Shanahan before I finally left a few months ago. And here's the thing. The Department of Defense is a really, really large organization. It is about 3 million employees. That includes military and civilian. That includes no contractors. That's like another 10 to 15 million people. So I just want you to think about that for a second. And they build planes, they build tanks, they build satellites floating around in outer space. They run GPS. I'm sure you've used it before. They do all these things. So it's a really, really big thing. And again, all of this relies upon the flawless execution of technology. And there are very few of those people in there. So I was brought in to figure out how to change that. So anyway, we started this team called the Rebel Alliance. Well, we do have one other office that we called the Alien Autopsy Room. We'll talk about that at a later time. And when I first showed up, we worked on this thing that we called service treatment records. And there's actually a couple different things that are happening. And we're going to go down to what David was talking about here in a moment as well. But here's the thing. I just want to set the stage. So at the Department of Defense, when you serve in the military, and you finally separate, there's a document that moves over to the Department of Veteran Affairs. It's called a service treatment record. That sounds very innocuous. But here's what it does. When I show up after I have separated, if I am sick for any reason or I need treatment or some kind of care, it is the document that will give me the benefits that I need to be okay. But it doesn't always work right? So when I showed up, I'd heard, hey, I think that some of the service treatment records are getting stuck. I think that some of them aren't going over to the Department of Veteran Affairs. So we went in there and we took a look. And as it turned out, doctors were scanning in medical records. And they were selecting PDF, TIFF, or JPEG as the file format. Quick, what's the right answer? PDF, TIFF, or JPEG? Damn, you guys are good. Are you all in the government or something? So here's the thing. This is actually a case that if you show up and you were in Desert Storm, you breathed in all these toxic chemicals because they were setting the oil fields on fire, and you have cancer and you need chemotherapy, if your forms were scanned in as a JPEG, you might die. You might die. This is the only story in my life of how a JPEG kills you that I know of. I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong. And I think that we deserve better. Because the work that my team did took us less than 45 days to fix. We wrote file format converters. It was not a sexy problem. We fixed it. In 5% of the time, somebody's not going to die. I think that's amazing. And here's how I think about the Department of Defense. We live in a place in which these systems, these things are frozen in time. They're part of a time and a place. Right? When I was a kid, I can remember things like hearing about the National Security Agency, the NSA. Being like, oh, that's where you go if you want to work on cryptography, right? Oh, working on DARPA, the internet, all these really cool things, right? That was the place that you went. But these things have changed. It's sort of flipped, right? At one point, you wanted to work on the cutting edge of technology. You were in the department. Now the cutting edge of technology is built on the outside, right? And so all these things, these legacy systems, these things that literally make the choice between life or death or change the outcome of people's lives, have sometimes just been sitting there, growing old. And I'm not talking about innovation. I actually call this out. At the DoD, everybody likes to talk about innovation. This is like the most important word. We want to be innovative. You know what I want to be? Innovative. So I actually think about it a little bit different. You know, when we talk about a lot, you've heard a lot about culture. You've heard a lot about what culture is and how people work on directing culture. You know, the DoD is a very hierarchical organization, right? It's got the military, it's got the civilian component. And everybody wants to change. I had a person on my team, actually from Seattle, who had a quote that he always said. Governments hate two things. One, the way things are. Two, change. So the question is, you know, how do you get to this? How do we actually bring in a new culture? How do we change things? And how do we think about it? Well, I don't actually think about it so much about innovation as much as I think about a little bit of disruption. It was funny because on the last panel, I heard something along this line. Guess what? This is a reality. When there is change, there will be enemies. There will be people who really like things the way that they are. But if they were perfect, we wouldn't be talking about changing them, right? That's the thing. It's just important to realize that we're sometimes going up against this Herculean task of changing an organization that seems impossible to modify, but it can be changed. It can be changed. I was 100% sure when I was going out to DC that there was no way that you could do anything in the Department of Defense or the federal government. I was wrong. But here's the key. What we found is that we built a small team that was highly empowered and able to do a lot of really cool things, right? But we did that by focusing on putting that team on things that mattered, right? Not superficial things, not small things, not things that would even take too long. We decided that we were going to, actually this is the most fun part, we came up with an idea for a thing called Hack the Pentagon. What you're probably thinking to yourself, does the Pentagon like a thing called Hack the Pentagon? I was told there was no way that we're going to call a program Hack the Pentagon. We called it Hack the Pentagon. And so what it was the idea that we could actually allow hackers who didn't work for the federal government to come and actually test the security of our systems, right? Some of the best hackers in the entire world would be able to beat up our systems and tell us if they were secure or not. Had never been done before in the entire time of federal government. That's amazing, right? And in about 3 months, we put together the first ever federal bug bounty. It became Hack the Pentagon, became the entire department's federal bug bounty program. It is now the model for the entire federal government, other agencies. Congress has written it into legislation for other federal agencies. Singaporean government came and they're like, tell us how you did Hack the Pentagon. That's amazing, right? Small team. Go in, work on things that matter. Do things that are challenging, but not too far, not too long, right? Because we want to show that there's value. We want to show that we can do things. And we want to pick something that's challenging that adds and makes the organization whole. And I think that the key to this is, as you're looking at these changes and you're thinking about these large organizations, it comes down to this idea of delivery. I love cultures of execution, right? Where we're actually doing things, right? We have an idea what we're going to do. We're going to move quick. We're not going to talk about the things we're going to do. We're going to make decisions. We're actually going to do those things, right? Sometimes it's very easy to get lost in talking about how we want to change things, but we actually just have to change them. And going into the DoD, I think I started with a team of, it was super small, 3 or 4 people when I showed up. And over time, we grew it to, when I left, right around 70 or so people who were part of my team, all top tier, top 1% technologists from across the country. Always focus on this idea that we should be delivering, and we should be delivering very quickly. I think that this is another thing. So that on the left, this person, you see stars on the shoulder. That is Dave Goldfein. He is the 4-star general that runs the Air Force. He's the highest ranking general in the Air Force. He is part of a thing you've probably heard of called the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's one of the Joint Chiefs. And there I am dressed like a schlep. That's Paul Tagliamonte, who was on my team, who helped build Debian and Ubuntu. That is Lisa Disbrow, there in the blazer. Lisa is was the Secretary of the Air Force, so she is the highest ranking civilian in the entire Air Force. Here's the thing. I love it when the things about change, these changes, are very easy to identify. I like it when you can look down the hall and be like, the hoodie guy. That's the hoodie guy. That was me. The very first time I ever met Jim Mattis, I was walking around in his office, and he had just started. And he saw me, and he was like, can I help you? Because he's a really nice guy. He's like, can I help you? I said, no. I know where I'm going. And he's like, okay. Next week, he saw me again. And he said, can I help you with something? And I'm like, no. And he goes, who are you visiting? I said, oh, I'm talking to this person. He said, I'll walk you back to his office. So he walks me back to the office, and he's like, so who are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm like the tech guy. I work for you. And he's like, oh, he's the nerd. But from then, it was really easy, right? When I first started, every office I showed up to, they would try to hand me their phones or their computers to go do IT support. Every time. That's okay. I wasn't offended. It's fine. Because I wanted them to know that this was our uniform, right? This is who we were. And over time, nobody thought anything of it. Right? One of my co-founders of my new company, Rebellion Defense, Nicole Camarillo is right here. We went and had dinner at the Japanese ambassador's house, and I was dressed like a schlep there. Nobody cares. They're like, oh, it's the nerd. There you go. Just make it super easy. I love it. It's okay to be different. This is a picture of one of our hackathons, and a real hackathon. This was Hack the Air Force. We actually had a bunch of active duty military next to, of course, the very stereotyped hacker in a hoodie. And it's amazing, because bringing these two cultures together, right? So I think of that as growing the rebellion, right? It is, we know that there are partners who are outside of what we need. Let's bring them into the fold. Let's bring them in and make them one of us, right? I had never really known anybody in the military before I joined the Department of Defense. I'd never known a general, right? And it's amazing what happens when you bring all these different cultures and communities together, right? You start to grow the rebellion. Then they're like, oh, if somebody shows up and they're not dressed in a t-shirt or something like that, maybe they're not an engineer. That's literally the types of things that they start to think. That's okay. Gives them a little bit of pattern recognition. The other thing is build an insurgency. Find others on the inside who can start to take the things that you're doing and go further with it. This young woman here is a brilliant mathematician. Her name is Lisa. And she is one of the people that we brought in on a program that we did called Gen Urso, which takes highly talented active duty military, puts them side by side with some of the best software engineers from industry, and they build something together. We built a piece of hardware to help protect soldiers in really dangerous places from having grenades dropped on them, from drones carrying grenades. There was a great Wired article about some of the work that they did. And Lisa was on one of these teams. And here she is getting a award from one of the highest-ranking civilians in an agency that has 3 letters that you've probably read about in the news. And that's amazing, right? That's amazing. She not only got to sit and learn how to be an incredible engineer sitting with a bunch of people who have built companies and built products, but on top of that, she gets to take those skills and then take them to other places within the DoD. I think that that's important, right? It's not that we're holding it to ourselves. Lisa is now part of the Rebel Alliance, right? She can go forward with that. I think that that's amazing. I think that's awesome. And she's brilliant. At least for us, this won't necessarily be true for every organization that you're all part of. The DoD is really big. They happen to be all over the world and in outer space. But we would go to where the work is, right? We would go to Afghanistan, Iraq. We would go to all these places, right? We would work with the people there who were really waiting for people like us, technologists, to show up and help develop things to protect them and save them, right? I think that that's important. And that's how we built the team. We built it as a team of go to where the work is. Sit down, meet the people, spend time with them, and build things that matter to change and save lives. Go to where the work is. I love it. This is actually this person who's got the white sunglasses on in this helicopter here is probably one of the best engineers, front-end engineers I've ever worked with. And we are literally flying across Afghanistan right now with a laptop out. It was fantastic. This is a Star Trek slide. So here's the thing. I believe, going back down to this idea of culture, all this stuff, I believe it's incredibly important. But I think it informs many things. I think it informs how we build teams. I think it chooses what we work on. Because I think it defines the things that we want to say about the types of work that we're doing, what we want to be, how we want people to perceive us. Look, it's okay to be the hoodie guy or be the guy who wears the Star Wars t-shirts all the time. That's kind of weird, right? But it's okay as long as the team is competent, right? And they're actually delivering. That's all right. That's how I think about it. The very first poster I ever brought into our office at the Pentagon, my office was at the Pentagon, that was weird, was get shit done. That's it, deliver. This picture right here is pretty amazing. This was my last day at the Department of Defense. And my team, I was getting an award from the Secretary of Defense. My dad came down from Ohio to come visit, and a stormtrooper walked into the office with a blaster. That was amazing. This is in the Pentagon. He's like, "Sir, please come with me." And I was like, "Oh shit, it's on." So I walked down the hall with this stormtrooper. Now I have no idea what awaits me. And they're like, "Go wait in this room." So I go and I wait in this room. And I'm with my dad, with a few friends that had come in. And they open the door. And there's a 20-some Star Wars characters, a 9-foot Wookiee, a fully robotic R2, a full C-3PO walking around doing the thing all around the Pentagon. You're not allowed to take pictures in the Pentagon. People were taking pictures. There was no stopping them. That's exceptional, right? I thought that was so cool. I think that culture does matter. I'm an incredible believer in using culture as a change agent, especially in very large bureaucratic hierarchical organizations. But I think there are a lot of things that you have to do in order if you really want to change it. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's very, very hard. And for all the good that I've told you, there are many, many sad nights, right? Many, many difficult things. I feel like I had the most negative recruiting pitch in the entire world. I said, I want you to come. I'm going to pay you a lot less than what you were paid at your last job. You're going to get none of the fringe benefits of your last job either. Most days will suck. They will be miserable. But one day, you will do something, and you'll change somebody's life, and they won't die. And you will have that until the day that you die. And that is why we come. And if that's enough for you, then you can come and be a part of this. That's what I got.
Awesome stuff, Chris. All right, so looking on Slido, so the first question that comes up is, it sounds like people are curious as to what types of projects did your team work on, if not classified, that you can share?
Sure. So a couple things that we worked on. I mentioned the very first one, which was service treatment records, making sure that veterans got access to healthcare. And then I mentioned another one, which was hack the Pentagon, doing bug bounties across the entire DoD. Over time, it started to change. We started to do a lot of things. I mentioned there's a really great Wired article. I think it's called "The Nerds Hacking Their Way Through Afghanistan" or something like that, and about building a piece of hardware that would ultimately help protect soldiers as they're going around and in some really dangerous places. So we did hardware and software over time. We worked on moving military families. Their system that had been developed a very, very long time ago. Absolutely miserable piece of software, right? I don't know if you know this, but something like 500,000 families in the military moved every year. Right? That's a lot. They move every year. So you think about this, whole families, they move their families and all their things. So it's really stressful. And it turns out that the system that had been designed kind of sucked. So it didn't really work. I had very little visibility. It was designed by people who I don't think had ever used it. And we rewrote the entire thing and just made it actually delightful. So we worked on things like that. And sometimes we worked on things like how we do background investigations and clearances, right? Because that's a very important thing. It actually stops incredibly talented people from showing up in government to help. Because in fact it's so slow and arduous and ridiculous. So we have a team that's been working on replacing that. So lots of things. When I left, we had about 14 active different projects that ranged from a couple $100,000 in budget to had a big one called Jedi Cloud, which is in the news all the time right now, which is a $10 billion project. So literally I had projects of all sizes.
Great. And are you allowed to share that service treatment record? With Showdown in general.
Right. So the document that we were talking about here is there's a thing. So Jim Mattis. So it's actually this letter of marque thing is the actual document that we're talking about here. Jim Mattis. So he's a study of military history. And then there's this, and he gave me a document that basically said, hey, when Chris and his team show up, policies won't apply. He will have access to your data. All your data belong to Kristen's team, and so he had this thing, and it turns out that the phrase comes from basically during privateers and then in the Navy days that countries would say, oh, you can seize the assets of other countries' things. Like, here you go. Here's a letter of marque, and so he actually did that. It's a very, very military name for a document that's like, hey, just help. But it fits for Mattis.
Got it. And then you're obviously a great culture leader. How do you ensure the culture lives on after you've left now?
Yeah. So there is no magic to this. But I'll say this. I'll say this one thing. I think that it is our responsibility to build teams that feel like they're working on important things, and we make them owners of the things that we are doing. And I think that with that comes a heart and a dedication that cannot be hired in a traditional way. And I think that it gives us a hope and a belief that we can do something extraordinary. All organizations, they change over time, right? They just absolutely do. But I think that it's important that we build these foundational elements in very early. And then when we're working on changing, we build teams that are sort of a supercell of culture. Because then they will, even if over time they go to different places, they'll bring elements of that with them. And while it may change or it may mutate in some way, the exceptional thing is that we gave them the tools and the ability to say, we do this because it matters, or we do this because it's about execution, it's about delivering, right? And hopefully they can continue to bring that on. So those are all things that we built in very strongly. If you were to go and visit the DDS office, it looks like Star Wars threw up all over it. There is that, but it's more than just the aesthetic. It's sort of this hope and belief that we can change the future.
Yeah. And when we went for our walk, you shared with me this story that's still in my mind about, I think you went to maybe Chicago or something like that for like when new recruits join, I don't know what branch of service, they get like a pack of paper, say like, put this in your safety deposit, whatever, and then I thought it was just an amazing story of the short amount of time and the bureaucracy you had to cut through to actually get to the results. Yeah. Mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. So when you enlist in the military, you have these young women and men, and they go to a thing called a MEPS, a Military Entrance Processing Station. And what happens is, they go through and they do some fitness tests, they make sure that they've never been arrested, things like that. And this basically gives them the thing that says, I'm going to sign up. They do some standardized testing as well to figure out what they might be good at. And then they sign a document that says, hey, I'm in the military. Now what would happen is, in order to sign that document, when we started, they go from place to place to place, and they get this like big packet of stuff, but a lot of paper. And then somebody goes and they scan it into a computer, and then somebody would print it back out, and they say, okay, sign this final thing, and then they would scan it back in. And then they would print out 5 copies of this thing that are each big. And they put those into manila envelopes, which would then go into a box. And then those boxes would go on FedEx trucks. Those would ship to the different places, the boot camps that these newly enlisted soldiers are going to go to. And then one packet they would hand to this newly enlisted soldier. They say, keep this for the rest of your life. Put it in a safe and don't ever lose it. Because if you do, you might not be able to get benefits later in your life. And they're like 17, 18, 19 years old. Good luck. Even better, we sent a team to go to one of these boot camps. These newly enlisted, they come off the bus. The drill sergeant's like, drop and give me push-ups. And they're like, the papers are flying everywhere. So like, it doesn't even work. So we just showed up and we're like, hey, you know what? Great engineer, David Hogue, we hired out of Google. It's like, I think I could just digitize the whole thing. And so like one winter, he's like, I'm just going to stay in Chicago. It was in the winter, and it was in December. And he wrote the web service to basically move everything digitally. And to get exercise, he would walk around Walmart because it was very cold and it was snowy. And then one day, all that paper disappeared because he did like a week and a half worth of work.
Wow. And they had hired a consulting company for like years and years and years, right?
They spent like $100 million, so then it failed. So yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. And there was resistance too, right? Like they didn't want you to work on it.
Yeah, I have so many amazing stories. There will be enemies, and you just have to either get them to come along or work with them to figure out how to make it happen.
All right, so so how has your experience in the military made you a better civilian entrepreneur?
Ooh. This has changed my life, actually. I just left the Department of Defense a few months ago. I started up a new company, realizing that it is important, right? These things that we're doing are really important. So myself and a few like-minded individuals, we started up a company called Rebellion Defense, focused on bringing the greatest technology system in the world to define and build the place where the future of technology that serves this mission is going to come from. And I think that that's important because I think that there are all kinds of things, right? We struggle with moral questions. We struggle with, like, how should these things be done? How should they be implemented? What are we building? I think that it's important that we show up and define that. As far as how You might not surprise you. It's called Rebellion, so Rebellion is still very much Star Wars in the idea of Star Wars. But I think that it has changed me a lot because it's given me a deeper appreciation for incredibly large organizations. It's given me appreciation for the importance of actually how people like you and people like me can actually change people's lives in ways that we don't ever expect day by day. And I think that that makes you think a lot when you're, especially starting a new company or you're building teams. It gives you an incredible appreciation for some of the things that are going on around this world that are very hard. I was in Afghanistan in December, and half a mile from a car bomb that went off and unfortunately killed 7 people, and it felt like it was right next to me. I mean, these are very dangerous places, and I want to do what I can to help them.
Yeah. And switching gears a little bit, what books are on your nightstand right now, or maybe Kindle?
I'm the worst. I don't read. I read the news. So I'm literally the worst. I'm a voracious reader of the news. I love to know what's coming up and happening. I'm very interested in trends, and I'm super excited for the new Star Wars movie that's coming out later this year, which will be a team event. But I'm very interested in the trends that are going on in technology, so I tend to try to read everything that's going on with all these things that I think are going to define the future of deterrence and protect democracies. I really believe it's that important.
So at the height, your department had 80 people.
Yeah.
And obviously you were doing amazing work and creating huge change in a short amount of time. Like, the government's spending like $100 million in Chicago. You go there, it sounds like in a weekend.
Yeah.
So what about thinking about the scale? Were you ever thinking like, oh, I wish I just had, instead of 80, add 800 or 8,000 to amplify that change?
Sure. So it's interesting. Again, I feel like you're doing the pitch for how I started my new company. My belief is that teams like Defense Digital Service in a thing like the Department of Defense are incredibly important. But I would convince people to come and join for what I called a tour of duty for nerds, 1 to 2 years. What would you do for 1 to 2 years? What would you do? What if you could change a life? What would you do? Would you do that? I would do that. But that model works because of the fact I say, hey, come for 1 to 2 years, and hey, I'm not going to pay you what you were making anywhere near before. And most people, because it's so important, that mission-driven aspect of the work is so deeply infused in, I think, most of what we all want, that people do it. And I wanted to take that heart, that belief that we could change things, but be able to do it at scale, and be able to build something very large. Because I think it's hard to do it with 1 to 2 years tour of duty, right? Because people are going to leave; they're going to go back to other places.
So is that the heart of the new company?
That is the heart of Rebellion. Is this idea that we ourselves can build products that change and save lives. So yeah.
Got it. All right, so I don't really get this question, but it's the #1 question, so I'm going to ask it. What's your opinion on all those innocent contractors getting killed when the Death Star got blown up?
It's funny that somebody else just said this to me the other day. Were they really innocent? Were they really innocent? I mean, they were building the Death Star. I don't know. Sounds like they could have worked on something else. Poor line of work.
So this one's related to both sides of the political aisle. It sounds like what you were doing in the resistance, was that pretty apolitical, or were there these polar fields that were pulling and pushing people in different directions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I came in under the Obama administration. I came in with Secretary Ash Carter. I didn't know anything about Jim Mattis, and he was absolutely phenomenal. I stayed because of him. Our organization at the Department of Defense, one of the most amazing things about the DoD is it is, for the most part, if you think about it, it's kind of like this organization that is so big, so massive, that it sits outside of the political undulations for the most part, right? It's sort of sitting off to the sides. And I think that that's what makes it so special. There are many other places in the government I wouldn't say that that's true, but the Department of Defense is a unique thing because of the fact that the consequences are severe, right? When things go wrong, they're not good when things go wrong. And there's a lot of people who are working on making sure that things go right. And so my team, most of the people from my team, I would hire people from Seattle, from San Francisco, from Austin, New York, Boston, right? These are the places, most of the tech hubs, I would hire people out of those places. We decided that we were going to work on things that mattered, right? We were going to get shit done. We decided not to work on weapons, right? We decided that was a really important thing to us, that we were going to work on things that saved and protected lives. But I think that that's what's so amazing about the department is it's such a big problem set. There's so many different things that you can work on that there's a huge opportunity to make an impact and still work on things that you believe in deeply.
Yeah. So then a few more questions is, what has been your favorite project to work on, including the DoD or outside the DoD?
That's been my favorite project to work on. It's interesting. You show up on day one when I went to the Department of Defense. I made this list, like, what are all the things that I would like to do? What are all the things that I would like to work on? And one of them that I decided that I would like to work on was, I was like, what would be really cool is if we could do like, what if the DoD had just access to the same tools and technologies that everybody in this room had access to, right? You can go home, take a credit card out, swipe it, and you have access to pretty much unlimited access to compute, storage, processing capability. The department doesn't have that. And so I started this program, it's been in the news quite a bit, called JEDI Cloud, Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure Cloud. And it has probably been one of the most amazing and painful things that I've ever worked on. It's constantly in the news. You can read about the drama. But it's constantly in the news. But what makes it exciting is how important it is, right? And it's cool and exciting because through all these things we did, right? We worked on things that I know literally changed somebody's life. But to have also the ability to have such a big impact across so many other lives and lives in the future, I think that that's one of the things that's that I'm most proud of and exciting. I don't know if I'd say it was fun. It was definitely very, very painful. And I have lots of stories about that I won't share on stage, but definitely very impactful. I also love that we started building hardware and software. We were literally soldering in the Pentagon. Like, it was so funny. The person who runs security for the Pentagon was like, "Is that a soldering table in your office?" And I was like, "We're doing soldering." So that was a lot of fun. A lot of cool things like that.
Wow, that's just amazing. So I'm going to end on the most highest rated right here. Is from Gemma in the audience. My brother did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan in the Marine Infantry. Thank you for your work.